fires outside Athens. And North Korea takes a step, but is it a step toward denuclearization or a step toward more deception? We'll get into all of that and more after these headlines from ABC News.
An additional 11 recordings handed over to New York prosecutors are conversations President Trump's former personal lawyer Michael Cohen had with members of the media. Sources reaffirmed to ABC News it appears the only recording involving President Trump involves payments related to former Playboy model Karen McDougal. Houston police are now pouring through hundreds of hours of surveillance video looking for possible leads on who shot and killed a prominent doctor. Cardiologist Mark Hausknecht, who once treated former President George H.W. Bush, was shot and killed while riding his bicycle to work Friday. 9 Australians have been awarded bravery medals for their involvement in rescuing 12 boys and a soccer coach from the cave in Thailand.
The European Union's $5 billion antitrust fine on Google has caused the company's second quarter profits to fall. But shares in the Alphabet-owned business are higher thanks to rising revenue and ad sales.
The Energy Department reports in the past week the average price of regular unleaded nationwide has fallen 3 cents to $2.83 a gallon. While regular unleaded is still 52 cents higher than it was a year ago. At least it is coming down.
Several companies are working on driverless car technology, but we could also soon see pilotless planes. Airbus officials said at last week's Farnborough Air Show outside of London that the goal is to develop technology by 2023.
And we're going to begin this hour with wildfires in Greece. They're burning outside of Athens. They seem to spring up out of nowhere, but the death toll is only increasing. And so we turn to ABC's Molly Hunter, who's with us from our foreign desk in London. Molly, what's the prospect of these fires coming to some kind of end?
Aaron, hey, good afternoon. Well, the prospects aren't looking good right now. Winds are at 60 miles an hour. Firefighters have been working overtime for the last couple of days. We did just get a new death toll. At least 74 people, Aaron, have been killed. Now, most of the fires are on the east coast of Greece, about 15, 16 towns of Rafini and Mati. And of course, Aaron, when you're on the coast and fires break out, there are only 2 ways out. You either get in the water and you swim, or you try to go inland, get in a car and drive. But because these fires were moving so quickly, these blazes were hopping over mountains, over roads, that a lot of the people who got into cars trapped, and we see horrific video of those cars, kind of a death trap almost, incinerated. You see those skeleton villages nearby Mati that have just been left. The other people hopped in the water. They sought obviously the sea right there for safety. The Coast Guard says they've picked up about 700 people. They have also picked up some bodies. We spoke with the Red Cross earlier today, and they said they found a group of 26 bodies just huddled together on a on a cliff right next to a cave over a beach, clearly trying to get down to the beach, trying to get to water to safety. But Aaron, at this point, we don't know what started these fires. Authorities are saying that there is an investigation into possible arson, but weathers are hot. They're sizzling all over Europe. There is a heat wave in Greece. And while it is expected to rain later this week, that may actually not be good for the firefighters. Aaron?
Molly, the government of Greece is not necessarily known for having its act together in all manner. Are they able to fight these fires, or are they going to need some help from the outside?
Severely under-resourced, definitely getting some help from other international partners, other European countries sending in planes and firefighters to help them out. But because of the weather, because it's so hazy, even outside of these 2 little areas, it's making visibility really, really hard. As I mentioned, as the weather changes later this week, those scattered showers on Thursday actually may hamper the efforts, given what the Greek authorities have put out right now. Even with the international help, that scattered showers may actually make it harder. That also may affect the wind, may whip the wind into irregular patterns, making the firefighting even harder. But even in Athens, Aaron, about 15, 16 miles away, residents there are saying they see the yellowy, smoky ash kind of over the Acropolis, of course, those famous landmarks there. So all of Greece really is suffering right now.
ABC's Molly Hunter with us from London. The latest on the fires burning outside of Athens that have already killed some 74 people. And we're going to turn next to North Korea because we are getting word that the North Korean government has taken a step toward dismantling a missile site. But we're not sure whether this is a step in the right direction. So we want to bring in our chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz, who's with us from Washington. Martha, what is North Korea doing and why are they doing it?
Well, first of all, Aaron, I do think this is a step in the right direction, a very teeny baby step. But what they're doing is dismantling a missile engine stand, it's called. And this is a place where they were launching missiles into space, and these missile engines were being tested. They were engines that the North Koreans were putting in ICBMs, those intercontinental ballistic missiles. They were also testing. So when you look closely at this, it is a tiny baby step for Kim Jong-un to do this. But in the end, it doesn't really mean that much because North Korea could restart those tests anytime they wanted to do it. And there's no real verification in place at this point. And many experts will tell you they already have the capability for an intercontinental ballistic missile. So this really doesn't mean that much. But at least they're talking. At least they're showing something. At least there is some sort of confidence building with the U.S.
But a true step, though, toward denuclearization would probably be dismantling the actual missiles themselves.
Exactly, the missiles themselves and those nuclear sites. And so far, that has not happened. They haven't shut down production yet in those nuclear sites, nor removed any of the fuel rods. We had the head of U.S. Forces Korea talking just this week about the fact that they have not seen progress in those areas, and that kind of progress is exactly what you need. And of course, you go back to verifiable, irreplaceable. That's what needs to happen for this to truly be successful.
The North Koreans did make some other promises after the historic meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Trump, namely to return the remains of U.S. service members from the Korean War. Has any of that happened?
There have been talks about that, and Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, said about a week ago that it could happen within the next few weeks, but they're still arguing over details of that. Of course, that is a very profound thing that can happen. Those remains returning to the United States, going to a lab in Honolulu. It has happened in the past. They do already have North Korean remains, but the process was halted some years ago, and the U.S., of course, is hoping that it will happen again. President Trump, right after the summit, if you'll recall, said it was as much as a done deal, that it had been done, but those 200 remains have not yet been returned, and they are still working out the details, but people are optimistic that that will happen. And unbelievably, Aaron, there are more than 7,000 remains of U.S. service members from the Korean War still missing.
It's a stunning number. Our chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz, with us from Washington. We're going to stay in Washington and bring in ABC's Karen Travers at the White House because the president has certainly been focused on North Korea. He has also been focused, it seems, on some of his critics when it comes to national security. He has threatened to revoke the security clearances of former government officials. So, Karen, who's with us from the White House, what does the president want to do, and is it even doable?
Yeah, Aaron, this was a very surprise announcement yesterday from the White House. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said that the president is considering or preparing to strip the security clearance away from former top national security officials. And she rattled off a couple of names. You have John Brennan, the former head of the CIA, James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, Mike Hayden, the former NSA director, and Jim Comey, the former FBI director. And why is the White House looking to do this? Well, Sarah Sanders says it is because they believe that these officials have politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and their security clearances while they have made baseless claims about the president's contacts with Russia. And frankly, Aaron, they have been very critical of some of the president's national security decisions, his policies, and his more controversial statements. Yesterday, Sarah Sanders was asked a lot of questions about whether or not the president was just doing this to punish his critics, and she brushed that off, but did say that that they're doing this because they don't like what these people have been saying, and they don't feel that they should have access to that classified information. Now, Aaron, these people are not getting weekly intelligence briefings as former officials, so the impact in practical terms may not be all that much, but it's a very strong statement from the White House. And now the question is, does the president follow through with this, or does he just put this out there as a threat? We heard from House Speaker Paul Ryan about an hour ago. He was asked about this news from the White House, and here's what he had to say.
The president has said that he wants to revoke security clearances from some former national security officials who still hold them and who have made political remarks. Is it dangerous to go down that road?
I think he's trolling people, honestly. This is something that's in the purview of the executive branch. I think some of these people have already lost their clearances. Some people keep their clearances. That's something that the executive branch deals with. It's not really in our purview. Yeah. I think he's just trolling people.
And the president does have the authority, is the wide latitude on security clearances, and courts would probably not want to challenge him on that. But Aaron, the House Speaker Paul Ryan does bring up a good point there when he says that some people have already lost their clearance. James Comey, Andrew McCabe, who was mentioned yesterday by Sarah Sanders, both say they don't have their clearance anymore because they, of course, were fired from those positions, which I think leads you to think that this wasn't really a well thought out, very long-term plan from the White House, but just they pulled together a list of names of people that they don't like what they've been saying without looking to see if those people even still had security clearances to revoke.
And there's a good reason that some of these former officials keep their clearances. They're often called back for their expertise.
Yeah, this is like a brain trust of former officials. So say a hot spot erupts that is not on the front burner or on the radar of the current administration. They've got former officials in the national security universe that they could turn to and ask for advice, pick their brains a bit. So it's helpful for them to still have that security clearance and access to information. It doesn't mean they're getting regular updates. Now, the more personal reason a lot of these people keep that security clearance is it enables them to do work for government contract firms, do security work, do cybersecurity work. Having that security clearance helps them make some money once they leave the government.
Karen, one of the other obsessions from President Trump that we learned about from his Twitter feed this morning was with tariffs, which he said were great. What does he mean?
Tariffs are the greatest, what the president declared on Twitter this morning. This is the same president who also said that trade wars are easy to win. The president last week, Aaron, in an interview with CNBC, says he's ready to put tariffs on everything coming in from China, $500 billion worth of goods. The administration has already done that on $34 billion worth of Chinese imports. China responded by slapping an equal amount on American exports. The president says if countries continue to treat the United States unfairly, he is going to seek retaliation measures. The response from Capitol Hill, from Republicans, no surprise, has been, this is not the way we want to pursue this. They do not think trade wars are a very good thing.
ABC's Karen Travers with us from the White House. Karen, our thanks to you. And we're going to turn north now to Canada, where Toronto is dealing with another deadly attack. And this one was in the middle of the Greektown neighborhood. That is where we find ABC's Gio Benitez now. Gio, you're right there at the scene where this shooting happened, and judging from the wall behind you, there's been quite an outpouring of community support.
Oh, yeah, Aaron, absolutely. We are here on Danforth, and Danforth is what they call the center of Greektown, as you mentioned. Take a look at this. This was a construction site that sort of turned into an impromptu memorial here. We see that we are Danforth strong. We stand together. Lots of messages from the community. What I want to do right now is sort of walk down the street, because police say that it was along this street where that shooter actually started shooting at different businesses. And we're going to approach now. I'm going to turn around here just to make it easier for our photographer Mike Grippo here. We're going to walk over here because this is the Alexander the Great Park. And I'm actually going to try to lower my voice here to be a little respectful, because this is the site where a lot of people are coming to mourn what happened. And in this particular park is where one of those victims actually died, 18-year-old Reese Fallon. If we come around here, we can show you what's going on here. We believe that it was in this area. In fact, some neighbors who live in those apartments there, they actually came out to help her. One of the men in there who lives in that building, he came out and he sees his son giving her CPR, and you can see on this tree right here, Reese and that memorial here. Love for all, hatred for none is what some of the messages here are in this community. There was also a 10-year-old, Aaron, a 10-year-old who died, and it was just along over this street here at another cafe. What we know right now is that 13 people were injured in total. 2 died, that 18-year-old and that 10-year-old little girl, Aaron.
And Gio, we now know the identity of the suspect. Do we know anything more about this gunman? Are they any closer to understanding why this happened?
Well, we know right now that he's a man from Toronto. Let's cross the street here if we can. We know that he's a man from Toronto. He's 29 years old. And by the way, he was found dead. It's unclear if police shot him or if he killed himself, but he was found dead in this area. So as far as him being a threat anymore, that's clearly not the case. But we know he's a 29-year-old man. And we actually, I'm walking down here just so you can see how far he went. He just kept walking all along this and shooting at different businesses. That's what police say. But I want to pop up on your screen right now a statement from the family, because the family has issued a statement, and this is what it says in part. Our hearts are in pieces for the victims and for our city. Our son had severe mental health challenges, struggling with psychosis and depression his entire life. While we did our best to seek help for him, we could never imagine that this would be his devastating and destructive end. So clearly the family is pointing to mental health issues, but police are not ruling anything out just yet, including the possibility of terrorism. I want you to see right now, because you see over there, it says, thanks for, you probably can't see it because of the sun, but it says, thank you for visiting. And police say that he went past that sign and went to a coffee shop there nearby. So really just an incredibly long walk. It's a miracle that more people weren't hurt by this, but no doubt the investigation is intense and it continues, Aaron.
ABC's Gio Benitez right there on what is an expansive crime scene in the Greektown neighborhood of Toronto. And we're going to come back to the United States and head toward Branson, Missouri now, where ABC's Marcus Moore has been following the aftermath of that duck boat sinking that killed 17 people. They've been able to raise the wreckage now from the floor of the lake in Branson. Marcus, what can you tell us about what that boat looked like? You were right there when it came up.
We were right there, Aaron. It was a moving moment, very emotional when you consider all of the people who were on that boat and all of the lives lost. That boat, the central focus now of this investigation into what happened. And we are here at Table Rock Lake, where that tragedy unfolded. And this investigation is happening against the backdrop of a place that's usually very tranquil and beautiful, like it is this morning. And I want you to take a look at that island. That is Duck Island. That is where that duck boat was taking the passengers last Thursday to go around as part of the usual tour. But as the storms intensified rapidly on Thursday, they never made it to that island. Instead, the crew tried to do an emergency turnaround and head back to the shore. And as you know, the tragedy unfolded from there. The near hurricane force winds battering that boat along with 6-foot swells. That boat eventually sank and 17 people died. The investigation now is on what the crew did as that was unfolding. Also, were there any other precautions taken ahead of this severe weather that caused so many problems here and led to the deaths of these 17 people? But more importantly, Aaron, those life vests. The reason I bring that up is because, as we have reported, Tia Coleman, one of the survivors, said that the captain on the boat told them where they could find those life jackets. But then she says earlier in the day, he told the group, but you won't need those life vests. And as we saw when that boat was being brought back up to the surface yesterday, we saw a line of life vests dangling from the top of the canopy, the top canopy of that boat. Those life vests, Ms. Coleman believes, might have saved her family members. She lost 9 of them, Aaron, in that one moment. 3 of her young children, her husband, and 5 relatives.
Yeah, the life vest, just a bright orange beacon coming out of the water that may indeed have made a difference. And inexplicable that the captain said you probably won't need these. Is anyone from the investigative side talking about any charges yet?
Aaron, right now this is being handled as a criminal investigation, at least until they can rule out that a crime has occurred. So that's what we know at this point. And of course, investigators have been conducting a number of interviews with witnesses and also any crew members who could shed some light on what was said and whether or not protocol was followed in this case. Certainly, we have not heard from the captain or anyone who works with him to refute or substantiate the Ms. Coleman's claims. Of course, that is a central part of this investigation, and we hope to learn the answer to that. But certainly, one of the most striking things that I saw yesterday was those life vests, as you have mentioned, a seemingly bright beacon. That was the first thing we saw come out of the water yesterday.
Yeah, striking indeed. ABC's Marcus Moore, our thanks to you from Branson, Missouri. And we're going to stay on the water. Another deadly boat tragedy unfolded a number of weeks ago in the Bahamas. But now a survivor is speaking out to ABC's Ariel Reshef.
Hey there, Aaron. We're here in Florida just weeks after that deadly boat explosion, and ABC News spoke exclusively with Stacy Bender. She's the mother of 22-year-old soccer player and dancer Stephanie Schaefer, who lost both of her legs in that blast. Stacy spoke passionately and emotionally at times. Let's take a listen.
I started scanning who I could see, and then Malika started yelling to me because her and I were the only ones launched. And she said, I can't swim, I can't swim. I'm screaming, where is Stephanie, over and over, and I'm hysterical. My friend Sheila just went into like MASH mode, I call it. She took over and said, we are getting out of here. They found a truck somehow. And she just took charge, and I said, I can't walk. And she just threw me over her shoulders, and she got me in the truck, and they got Stephanie in the back of the truck, and we had a very long ride to the hospital.
And we do know Stephanie spiked a fever over the weekend, but doctors say they're optimistic. She's expected to spend 3 months in the hospital. Hopefully she'll be moved to a step-down unit in the ICU in the next 2 weeks. But we are seeing a really sweet image coming out of the hospital, a little bit of positive hope there. Take a look at this. This is Stephanie, the first time we've seen her since that deadly explosion. She's standing next to an ICU nurse and next to a hairstylist. The ICU nurse had spent time in the ICU as a child and realized what that comes with. And so she brought in her friend, a hairstylist, and the two of them spent 5 hours combing the mats out of Stephanie's hair and offered to do that every week until she is released from the hospital. The family says all of the thoughts and prayers, those acts of kindness, are helping to sustain them. I'm Ariel Reshef in Florida. You're watching ABC News Live.
Ariel, thanks. It is a sweet image to see indeed, and our hopes for a speedy recovery. We want to get you caught up on the weather now because there are flood warnings in the east. There's heat, just incredible heat out west, and our chief meteorologist Ginger Zee is here with the forecast.
Aaron, thank you. Want to start with that flash flooding in Colorado because we've got flash flooding to talk about all the way to the East Coast, but this happens on the front range of the mountains there, and you get 1 to 3 inches of rain, and then it grabs all that mud. A lot of the burn scars are really vulnerable spots. Go to the East Coast, and we've had up to a foot of rain. That was in Calvert County, Maryland. This picture out of Pennsylvania, just another place where the soil is so saturated, and now we have even more rain coming. Tropical moisture, you can feel it when you walk out the door. It feels like you're in the tropics. And that constant flow of rain showers. From Charlotte up to Binghamton, we're in a flash flood watch. You'll see warnings pop here and there. Pay close attention when that does happen. Flights may be affected in the next 48 hours or so as that moisture squeezes against the cold front. You could see up to 5 inches from coastal North Carolina right through Pennsylvania and New York. Then I wanted to take you west again. Remember, we're talking about the flash flood potential, that muddy water rushing in Duchesne County, Utah. You'll see more of that in some of these spotty storms, but northern New Mexico is where we have a box of flash flood watches. Santa Fe is included. That goes through much of today. And then finally, want to leave you with the fires. Of course, there are so many wildfires burning. This one is the Carr Fire in Northern California. 2,500 acres burned, 5% contained, and the heat is only staying on. I'm telling you, Waco, Texas, smashed their all-time record at 114, and it's not done. We're going to see this heat, even in Seattle, all the way through the end of the week and even the weekend for some folks. Aaron?
All right, Ginger, thanks. It is hot in so many places in this country. And for more on the weather and all of the stories that we've been talking about, check out abcnews.com, download the ABC News app. For now, I'm Aaron Katersky. You're watching ABC News Live.